Stock futures are clawing back some losses this morning. We are mixed among the U.S. major averages. This coming after Monday. China's AI model torpedoed tech giants, namely Nvidia, and the chip maker shed nearly $600 billion from its market cap in Monday's session, largest loss in market history for the company. And retail investors, they took advantage of the dip, buying more than 550 million in shares. That's the largest amount on record going back to 2014, according to Vanda Research here. But the larger question, too, is off of yesterday's activity, how much of that and the bounce that we're seeing a little bit here today, how much of that will hold? Are we in the dead cat bounce territory, or is this something that is more pronounced or prolonged? Now, everybody would be right to also look at a longer term chart. Yesterday's decline included, but then also if you're looking at some of the moving averages, Nvidia broke through a 200-day moving average. The larger question that I have is, are we going to see, especially extended hours pre-market as we've gotten back above that 200-day moving average, is this a sustained move back above that, or is this the lead to what Ray Dalio is calling out in some of the early setup that is similar to what took place in the dot-com bubble?
Yeah, I think if history is a guide, it is a bit concerning, right? When you take a look at the past to some of the larger sell-offs that we had, specifically with Nvidia, and going back to the last 8 times, it actually fell more than 17%. The next day, it only closed higher 3 of those times, so far less than half. So we could see potentially a bit of a reversal here as we do wait for the trading day to get underway, and then, of course, throughout the day. The one silver lining, though, I think for investors, and very much has been the focus, it's been in a lot of notes here this morning, is just the concentration of yesterday's sell-off. Yes, we did see a deep sea of red here when you take a look at many of those larger cap names, when you take a look specifically at the NASDAQ, with the NASDAQ closing off just about 3%. Obviously a bit worrisome here when you take a look at a name like Nvidia, given the size, the magnitude, how important it has been to the market's overall momentum here over the last several months, falling and falling so dramatically. But when you take a look, I say the S&P equal weight index, that was essentially unchanged yesterday. When you take a look at some of that price action, even beyond that, certainly a bit encouraging here. Majority of the S&P stocks actually ended the day higher. You had the advanced decline index, and that measures stocks rising minus those that are falling. That showed a positive reading of 199, even as that benchmark fell just about 1.5%. So again, that puts some of this selling into context. And yes, while there is reason to be concerned, and you see why some of the larger, well-known investors like a Ray Dalio are maybe drawing larger comparisons to what has happened in the past, I think it is a bit reassuring here for investors this morning that you can easily, I think, make the argument that the bull market is still very much intact.
Yeah, the major question that is unanswered at this point is there a crack in the secular trend here? And from the conversation we had yesterday with Stacey Raskin, and then additionally we had Dan Newman on, and in their conversation with us, they said the secular trend remains intact at this juncture. However, UBS out with some research here this morning too, and they also tend to think the magnitude of the moves today will ultimately prove yesterday's reaction to be overdone, though the overhang may persist until those key questions specifically about the secular trend are answered. We're not going to hear from Nvidia until, at least on the earnings front, until February 26th. Meta's perhaps one of the first instances that will finally get of continued not just AI spending, but also the monetization of that early on, at least with that as the major theme that's driven the markets for the past 2 years. And oh yeah, as a reminder, our conversation with Mohamed El-Arian last week, he reminded that after 2 consecutive years of 20% growth, it's highly unlikely that we would see a third. However, it is still within the realm of possibility that you would still see gains in totality and aggregate here.
Yeah, certainly. And when you take a look at the market's activity this morning compared to what we saw yesterday, it is a bit eerily quiet, at least right now, when you take a look at some of the volume and some of the action that we are seeing. We also have earnings out this morning. We also have an update there from President Trump in regards to tariffs. We're still talking about, obviously, the focus here this morning very much being that stock that's on your screen right now, Nvidia. We are looking at gains here just about 2.5% ahead of the open.